Melissa and I are coming up on 11 years together next month. That's exciting. But if you do the math, that means that we got together, we got married when I was 21 and Melissa was 22. And we had been engaged for about 5 months before that, before we got married, and dated a year before that. Now, for some of you, you think, oh my gosh, I can't believe you were that young and you got married. I think the same thing myself. It seemed pretty crazy. It seemed even crazier to the people around us. I, at the time, was working as a waiter at a restaurant. Remember those? And while I was there at the restaurant, I remembered the other fellow waiters who were around my age or even years older, even a decade older than me, would look at me and said, wait, you're getting engaged and then you're getting married and you're only how old? And then they would ask some other questions and they'd find out that Melissa and I weren't living together. We weren't sleeping together. We were crazy in the eyes of the world. We were crazy in the eyes of the world. Now, I'm not going to get into the specifics of that, but I know that God teaches us in His Word that we should stay faithful and pure before we're married, that we should not sleep together, that we should not arouse love before it is time, because when you do that, it actually leads to the strongest bond within the marriage. But that's beside the point. That's a bonus point for today. The point is that when we lived a different life at the time, people thought we were crazy. They were surprised by how we lived our life. They were surprised by our spirituality. Now, I'm not saying this to pat myself on the back. It was difficult and challenging to do that, and I'm sure there's other you living through difficult circumstances. But when you decide to follow Jesus and you decide to live a holy life, to leave sin behind, you will surprise people with your spirituality. And I want to encourage you guys to continue to do that, to be weird. Earlier in chapter 2, a couple weeks ago, we looked in verses 11 and 12 how we are supposed to stand out, because that's the way to make a difference. And I want to encourage you again from the word that Peter teaches us, God's word, that we should surprise others with our spirituality, because our world is not the best way to do things. Just because everybody's doing it, doesn't mean it's right. And that's definitely not true. So we need to learn to surprise people with our spirituality. In chapter 4 of 1 Peter, Peter writes, "Therefore, since Christ suffered in His body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans choose to do, living in debauchery, lust, drunkenness, orgies, carousing, and detestable idolatry. They are, get this, surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living, and they heap abuse on you. But they will have to give an account to Him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached even to those who are now dead, so that they may be judged according to human standards in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the Spirit. The end of all things is near. Therefore be alert and of sober mind, so that you may pray." See, he's reminding at the end that we don't live life the way the rest of the world does. You read some of those things he described, the orgies, debauchery, alcoholism, sexuality run amok. There are so many things in this world, substances, like drugs that people are engaged in, even recreational drugs here, pot here in Colorado. There are things that other people do, but just because other people are engaged in them or giving their life away to the things doesn't mean that you should. In fact, you probably shouldn't. If Jesus has called you and you have accepted His call to follow, you are called to a life of spirituality, to grow in faith, to grow in purity, to grow in holiness, to grow as a follower of Jesus. And this means we will, like he said, surprise people with our spirituality. But it's that act of surprise that will open up so many conversations, because people actually are finding out that the lives that they're chasing after, the alcoholism, the sex, there's so many things that our world says is important, actually doesn't fulfill you. It doesn't fulfill you. There was a Christian pastor and author. I read one of his books and was influenced by him. He recently passed away at a young age. I think he was 49. But he had one question that he often asked other people, especially when he was talking to unbelievers or those who were not walking with God. He would say things like, he would say the question, "How's that working out for you?" I love that question. How's that working out for you? Because Put it back on them. They think you're crazy. They think you're weird. Put it back on them. How's your lifestyle working out for you? See, my lifestyle, yes, I will not do some things that you think are normal, that I might be viewed as weird and I might stand out, and yet it is leading me into a growing relationship with God, filling me with the fullness of joy, that I am storing up treasures eternally, and that I have a satisfaction now. See, we must surprise others with our spirituality. So that's my challenge to you today. Surprise others with your spirituality, and then you can spark in them a desire to have the hope that you have. And that's how we live in hope. Surprise others with your spirituality.